Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. It's Ukraine War Frontline update for the, my goodness, what is it? The 9th of February 2025. This is a 5-day update. Last time I did one was on the 4th. And there's a few things I just want to point out. The reason I've got this legend open on the left here is that when one colour is on top here under the pins, I guess, tab, it means that there are more of them than the one below. And what's very significant here, basically with Andrew Perpetua's pins, there are over half of the pins are blue, which means are signifying Ukrainian advances. And for Suryat maps, most of the pins are blue, signifying, for as far as Suryat maps is concerned, there are more advances, or at least more pins to indicate different advances on the map for Suryat maps for Ukraine than for Russia. And someone popped into my hits and losses video this morning and said, well, I can see there's no change at all, you know, deja vu, etc., etc. And yeah, to a degree, when you report on this stuff every single day, there is going to be an awful lot of sameness. But actually, I think there might be a slight change happening here. And we are hearing that in Prokrosk area, so that is on the eastern front, down where you can see some of these blue pins actually, the Russians are slowing down. They are, I mean, this is what, a 5-day update, and look at the advances in 5 days down around Karakivka. Like, that's it. In 5 days, you've had a couple of fields, north and south of Dacia and the rest of Dacia there. You've got, I mean, this is a problem, advancing into Drivka. So that's serious. But essentially, that looks like, you know, very small advance up a tree line there. Essentially, 5 days of advances is looking far less than we've seen previously. I mean, look at the 5 days would have had pins all around this entire front line previously. But it isn't now. So I think there must be, or certainly in the last 5 days, there has been a slight change. Well, maybe not even slight, a significant change. Now, going further up the front line, I think Oskil is a big problem for the Ukrainians. The Oskil River around Dvorichna, where the Russians have got across the river and are proceeding westwards quite a bit. But Kursk, the Ukrainians have been on the attack there and have stabilized the western side while taking some gains on the eastern side. So, I think, you know, I do wonder whether we are now seeing the Russians start to properly culminate. We are hearing in the hits and losses video this morning, there were lots of different sources suggesting that it's incredible how many unarmored vehicles the Russians are using to attack. You would only do that if you had to, right? So I think the Russians are struggling for equipment, they're struggling for personnel, and of course the Ukrainians are too. And they are looking like they're culminating to some degree. Now, it could be that they find some more troops. It could be that North Koreans are thrown at the problem. It could be that they are able to pick this up again. Zelensky was talking about how the Russians are looking to increase their forces by about 100,000. I'm sure that Putin will not want the Russians to culminate. They want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing so that they can enforce a beneficial ceasefire agreement for the Russians. So they will throw, we know they're throwing injured people back into the fray long before they should do. People on crutches. I've seen many videos of Russian soldiers on crutches trying to bat away drones and, on the front line in the contact area. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to overstate things and be too sort of positive for Ukraine. But I think the Russians probably are struggling a little bit to continue the momentum. And that seems self-evidently true by looking at the pins on the map. Okay, let's go to the Kursk sector. We're going to pop into the Institute for the Study of War, American military think tank, see what they have to say. So Russian mill bloggers. So the Russians are claiming that fighting continues southeast of Sudzha near Makhanovka, Cherkasskaya Konopelka and Fanasievka, and that Russian forces are clearing nearby forested areas. 2 Russian mill bloggers claim that Ukrainian forces control Cherkasskaya Konopelka and Fanasievka, but another mill bloggers claim that Russian and Ukrainian forces both maintain positions in Cherkasskaya Konopelka. Okay, let's put that on the map. So as you can see here, Andrew Perpetua has some pretty wide-ranging gains for the Ukrainians, going from these light blue lines. This is the Russian defensive line being pushed right back to here, which means that the Russians are not in control of Fanasayevka and Cherkasskaya Konopelka. But there are some Russian mill bloggers claiming that there is some Russian presence in, well, certainly Cherkasskaya Konopelka, but whether that's true, I don't know. Then Surat Maps claims that the Russians have been pushed back in this area up to the dark blue pins, or from the dark blue pins back to the orange line there. So some fairly significant changes there. I think these ones are probably just glitches there, so ignore those red ones. And that is good news for the Ukrainians. They are pushing, or have pushed, the Russians out in this area. I wonder how much the Ukrainians have left in the tank for the kind of maneuvers they are trying to do here, whether that's basically all they can manage, whether there's more in the tank, more resources, material and troops. I don't know. We shall see. They seem to have stabilized up at Malaya Lochnia. Indeed, the Institute for the Study of War, what do they say? Yeah, not too much else to add to that, really. So stabilization for much of the Kursk front. So for 5 days, that's pretty good. But then when we come down to Vovchansk, doesn't seem to really be much change there. In fact, I think that's a bit of a glitch. So no change to the Kharkiv fronts at all. Worryingly, the Russians are across the Oskil River here, and it could be that they are making a bit of a bid up near Topoli, right near the border as well, getting across the river there. That's according to Surat Maps, and that's right on the bluff area too. So that will be worrying. But yes, certainly further to the south, some quite wide-ranging gains for the Russians, both according to Andrew Perpetua and Surat Maps. They are pushing west. There are some claims that the Ukrainians still have presence in Dvorichna. In fact, I think the Institute for the Study of War talks about this here. So where do we have it? Luhansk. Here we go. Yes. So Ukrainian military observer Konstantin Mashevets stated that Russian forces have not completely pushed Ukrainian forces out of Dvorichna, and that Russian forces only occupy some areas in the northern part of the settlement. So that would suggest that Andrew Perpetua's mapping is correct here, and Surat Maps is incorrect. I mean, Surat Maps has a very charitable interpretation for this area, with the Russians completely controlling Dvorichna and pushing far to the north and also to the west. But yeah, Mashevets says that's not true. Now, we also know, as according to Chris Wiki and other sources, that the Russians aren't being all the time very accurate with their claims. Some leaders are getting bonuses for claiming they've taken towns and villages when they haven't, and then they're having to try and take them post hoc and throwing people into meat assaults to try and prove that they do indeed control these places. So, always take well, I would take Surat Maps' claims more with a pinch of salt than Andrew Perpetua. Andrew Perpetua will change things much more on visual evidence and not what the Russian MOD say. So a lot of what these darker pins suggest is movement according to the Russian MOD. And that's not always the most reliable of sources. Okay, so a bit of a problem up there. As we come further down to the south, in the just north of Kramina, a few gains for the Russians west of Makivka there, and I think I saw some video evidence coming out of Makivka of quite a bit of destruction there, as you would imagine. And then around Turney here, a bit of filling in there for Andrew Perpetua's mapping in accordance, or now more aligned with Surat Maps, slightly different otherwise concerning Turney itself. But Institute for the Study of War saying it's broadly fairly somewhat stable there. Stable is probably the wrong word, but not as much move as there has been. Now, Chaviv, we hear that there's a 2-kilometre stretch of a road here, and I don't know where it is. It might be the T0504 coming out of Ivanivska on the way to Stubochki. I don't know. Somewhere around here, there's a 2-kilometre stretch of road where they have produced chicken wire wall netting to protect the vehicles traveling along it from drones. And we'll see how long that lasts. Again, for 5 days, it's not too bad. There is visual evidence of that that factory being under control of the Russians. I've seen that. In fact, I had that up to show you, but it's from January the 15th, and I deleted the tweet. But yeah, there is video evidence that the Russians are in this big sort of factory area there. And as you can see, Andrew Perpetua and Surat Maps has that under Russian control. And for Surat Maps, a little bit more of Chaviv Yar. So still fighting in Chaviv Yar, but it is definitely largely under control of the Russians there. So that's a real shame. Turetsk, a lot quieter. I say quieter, I mean, the gains are not as much. It's a complete wasteland, this Turetsk area, in terms of what's left of the city. Just a bit of a hellscape. Some assorted gains north of Turetsk, but nothing too serious, which again, I think tells you quite a bit. They might be just taking a breather, reconstituting, recalibrating before continuing to go again, or they might just leave it there and concentrate elsewhere. I mean, it's quite a few fields. Otherwise, they'll be working out where best to expend their resources, the Russians. And as we come further along the front, now we look at the kind of northern sector of the Prokrosk front. We can see it's a bit of a mixed bag around that area where they're trying to get close to the T0504 highway as it comes down from Konstantinivka. So it goes through, we were talking about it up in Stupochki area and Ivanivska. That road comes through Konstantinivka there, which is a major staging ground for Chaviv Yar and was for Bakhmut. And that road is an important road, but it's been under fire control of the Russians for some time now, and they are trying to interdict that properly. Now it appears that they are getting ever closer, at least according to Surat Maps. Not quite so charitable for Andrew Perpetua there, but the Ukrainians might have taken a few areas back here from the Russians, as according to Surat Maps there, and then losing some around there too. So bit of push and shove. And then when we come to much closer to Prokrosk, we have here, actually going back to Turetsk, there is a video out of a flag being dropped, I think, in Turetsk. It was supposed to be a bit of a PR exercise for the Russians before we go on to Prokrosk. Russians tried to hoist the tricolor, so the that Russian flag, over Turetsk. The occupier climbed to the mine's headframe. Predators attacked with a drop, while artillery fire from adjacent units hit. The result is the rag didn't even get unfurled, and you can see it fall, the flag fall to the ground there. So an attempt to raise the flag on the mine, I don't know exactly where that is, might be around here somewhere, and then, yeah, not getting very far with that. So that video is doing the rounds at the moment. But anyway, when we come back to Prokrosk, Grayskull here saying, okay, Russian channel states that the Ukrainians have started a counteroffensive into the Prokrosk salient. And this is one area, if you go and look at Andrew Perpetua's live stream from the other day, or not so much the live stream, but a video he did on the front line, he talked about the Ukrainians attacking in 3 places particularly. One of them is around here, another one up in Kursk, obviously, and then also in Kamianske, which interestingly doesn't show any changes on the map here. But the Ukrainians are pushing around this area at the moment, and that's been evidenced by video footage and whatnot. But yeah, one of the places that the Ukrainians do seem to be counterattacking is around Prokrosk, and they've taken, apparently, according to some, taking Kotlina fully back. So neither of the mappers have that yet. That might subsequently be indicated as not under Russian control. Both the mappers have that under Russian control, and also they're attacking into Pischani here as well. So we go back to Grayskull. This is, Ukrainians starting a counteroffensive into the Prokrosk salient. Quote, after the most vile one ordered to stop the assault action so as not to scare off the emerging agreement. I don't know what that means. The Ukrainians, the expletive there for them, suddenly began a counteroffensive near Prokrosk. The attacks come from 3 sides at once, and they're trying to cut off the throat at our salient, which ensures the envelopment of Prokrosk. The throat is only 7 kilometers wide, which already complicates the logistics, and no one could even think of it. says this Russian source. Pro-Ukrainian channels report that the air view have almost completely cut off the enemy at Kotlina. So it might not be that they're in control of it, but actually they've come down here and cut the Russians off in Kotlina. There is also the idea that they are trying to attack across here and cut off the neck of this Russian sector. And that's what is being claimed here by Grayskull. Pro-Ukrainian channels also report that the Ukrainian armed forces have forced the enemy to retreat from the center of Pischany. So that is as marked here on the map, and that's why we can see these pins indicating some Ukrainian gains, that the Russians have been kicked out of the center of Pischany. And that will be really good if, well, it does appear to be true. Both mappers agreeing with that synopsis largely. We'll see what happens with Kotlina and whether there is any significant attack coming from the direction of Alexandrivka there, up through towards Pischany to cut that neck off. But the good news that the Ukrainians are able to mount that attack. There's been a change of military commander, I believe, in this area, and that could lead to some changes. But it could also be that the Russians themselves are culminating. Then some much smaller changes compared to what we're used to seeing, as mentioned already in this area of Karakivka and Drivka. And Drivka is a bit of a problem because that's a logistical hub. But of course, you know, it's when you talk about logistical hubs, you're often talking about when the map looked very different and the Russians are over here. If the Russians are over here, then yeah, that's a really important logistical hub with roads coming through it. But of course, if that's now, you know, if the Russians are here at Karakivka, then it's kind of less important as a logistical hub. So yes, it's a shame that Andrivka is being taken. That's a really important place, but its importance will be less now, obviously, than it was 6 months ago, to be quite frank. And, you know, as you move back, these other places become the logistical nodes, if you like. And that's pretty much that for the Frontline update. Other than to say that Kamianske is seeing a fair bit of activity, even if the mappers haven't changed anything. Andrew Perpetua talked about it. I wonder if the ISW mentions it at all. Goodness me, Chaviv, Turetsk, lots and lots of analysis here. So Kamianske, if you look there, yeah, I don't know if that blue signifies a change there. Around that area, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Unfortunately, I don't think I can get back into that. Yeah, all we have from the ISW is that the Ukrainians unsuccessfully attacked there, according to a Russian mill blogger, in the Stepova and Kamianske area with armoured vehicles. So that is, you know, this general area. We shall see. We shall see if the Ukrainians achieve anything there. Anyway, that's enough for me. Hopefully that gives you a bit more of an idea of what is going on and whether we can join some of these dots together with regard to the hits and losses video and, you know, again, even the geopolitics and, you know, what's being said internationally in terms of what's going on the front lines. I don't know why my map is going in and out. It's just a mind of its own. Anyway. Thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate your support. Take care, everybody. And please subscribe to the channel. We've just got over 50,000 subscribers, which, as you know, I'm not interested in. I'm interested in 50,139. That's really the golden number that everyone talks about behind the scenes. So any help with that would be great. And then I can just, I don't know, make myself an extra cup of tea and go and put my feet up for 10 minutes. Toodle pips. Speak soon.